we need to start by cutting out our lumber rough. Rough lumber ready to be made flat needs to be made slightly larger in width, and you usually buy it thicker than what you need, and it is not flat. And if you buy lumber that's already produced, like Home Depot lumber, it's smooth on the surface and it's a predicted thickness, but it's not flat. So for millwork, you need to make it flat. And that first step is roughing out each cross-section that you need, slightly oversized, because if you don't, when you cut a wide board like this one, it changes. So you rough it out before you make it flat, because if you make it flat, a wide board, and cut it, it springs, and it's no longer flat, and it doesn't have any thickness to remove in order to make it flat. So, assuming I want a 3-inch board, I would rough out about 3 1/4 to 3 3/8 in width, so that when I take the rest of the material down off of it, it doesn't have much movement because I'm only removing a small amount of wood. So step one in building this little bathroom cabinet is that for all my pieces, I look at my list of parts and I rough out everything I need. So then we have to flatten it. First step is on the jointer, you flatten the piece of material with the curve like this. Yeah, because if you use a jointer, it'll rock if you've got your curve down. To check the curve, you can use any flat surface. This is a jointer, it has a flat surface. And do it by touchy-feely. Ah, it rocked. Therefore, the curve is like this. We want to run it this way, or it will wobble while we feed it. And it will produce its pathway. It will not make it flat. So now I have it flipped over and it doesn't rock. And then to keep track of things, we put an X on it. Now this is ready to be face jointed, first step in dressing it after roughing it out. So now I have a board that's a little oversized, flat on one face. This side, which rocked because it had a curve like this, is not flat. It is thicker in the middle, and more material came off on the ends. So the next step is to go to the planer and reduce it in thickness to the size that you want. Now, on this project, I had dressed lumber, but it was thicker. So this is just an example to make the story complete. In the rest of it, you'll see I have lumber that I've planed. You see me planing it, but I didn't have to do this first step because I already had flat lumber. So the planer will cut off the top of the piece as it runs through. If the bottom is flat, it's going to copy that flat bottom to the top of the piece of wood as it comes through, depending on the spacing between the cutter head, which is above, and the table, which is what you raise to adjust. Back to the jointer to straighten the edge. Again, the curved side is upward on the top edge and concave on the lower edge, so that it won't rock. Once you cut it, we put a V mark on it to indicate which edge is straight. The final step is to cut your lumber to its finished width, putting the V line, which is the straight edge, against the rib fence on the saw. Now note, the guard is not on. That is only for clarity. And we are not doing a video. Excuse me. You put the guard on. All done. Right width, right thickness, extra length, and flat. All right, next up is we cut them to length. I have labeled the ends. That's something we do so we don't cut the wrong piece. And that is the only place it'll stay through the whole process. We label it before we even start dressing it. So you always cut both ends, and you want to look and make sure that you cut pieces that are the same length with one setting, because you're not likely to get it perfectly back where it was. So always cut both ends. We're looking for 3 pieces that are going to be 18 7/8. You set the stop block, put the line here, over the line there, 18 7/8, and you cut both ends. The ends can be very wild. So you always need to, don't trust them, you always need to cut both ends. This is the side, the sides are 18 7/8. Cut one end. Slide it down. And cut the other end. Then the other 3 pieces. So, here are the clamped together pieces. I've marked them, I clamped them, so I could mark them for location, because I need to lay out the toilet papier holder. The toilet paper goes here. And these 2 pieces are going to have the toilet paper hanging on them on a dowel that has to be in just the right location, right here. I need a hole here, and I need a hole here. They don't have to be within 64ths, but they have to be pretty good. And then the next thing I'm going to do is have the dowel drop in on a slot that runs toward the top. That's going to be problematic. No, I'm not going to do it that way. We've got to be able to actually move it in. And that would not work. Good. Imperfect design work. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to make it go in a pathway where it just drops a little bit. So I have to connect those dots. And that will require a setup with a router, which I'll bring after I figure out how to guide that path. Made myself a template. I'm going to put this router bit against it, and it extends about 3/16 beyond the template that it rides on. That's how deep the cut will be. It has this bearing right here that rides against the template, and that guides the path of the cut. Now I simply need to clamp the template down to my layout mark. Here we go. I've got my dowel pathway. Works fine. Good. Next, I'm going to make the little curves on the bottom that make it resemble a baby hutch, and also make this part of it fit on the ledge that it sits on. It's pretty much freehand work. The point is that it looks right. It needs to be 2.5 inches wide at the back side. That can run straight up for a distance. Then I'm just going to artfully draw a pathway that generates a nice curve. And I like that right off the bat. A little tweaking might be called for, but that's pretty good. I like it. Bandsaw first, cutting a little away from the line. And disc sander for the straight part. Oscillating spindle sander for the curve. And it's ready for the final assembly. Okay, now it calls for a top rail to keep things from falling off as the trailer rolls down the highway. I opted for brass because I can easily bend it to match the curves and forelooks. And we needed a detailed, very fine system to support it. This is what I worked out. It's a little wooden post. Here's the wooden post process. We clamped the dowel between the two pieces of wood and drilled so that it wouldn't wander. We got rounded ends to match the brass. And we drilled into the end of the sticks and cut them off with the bandsaw. Next, we prepped the rails so we could drill right through those standoffs like this. And then we needed to darken everything. So these are darkening agents that you can buy. Jack's company is excellent and reasonable quantities. So this is one that's specific for brass that they're putting on here. And it doesn't take long. You do want to rinse it. Now it's ready to go on. Position it, drill it, and this thing is just about done. That's it. Except I want these little bungee straps. You can buy these things, but they're huge. So I needed to have ends. I made them with the plug cutter, then I drilled through them with the plug cutter, then cut them off with the bandsaw and made these little custom-made beads. Then I had to string them on 1/8-inch bungee cord and make them not come off. So I used a trick with a rope cutter. This is where I melt it and flare the end, let it harden, and then it's strapped, and I've got a custom-made retainer. That goes up high on the tall shelves so that you can take a tall item out, but it's not in your way for putting it in. So they just snap on these little hooks. If you don't need it, you just let it hang. And here it is. Here's the finished product. And I'm pleased. I like the outcome.